Hello, my name is Jonathan. Welcome to the Haystack. It's harvest time. This is my third attempt in recording this video. The recording has failed on me and dropped twice now. So now I'm just doing an audio. And today I want to talk about Adam-ondi-Ahman. Now, I have a lot of new followers on the channel, and I wanted to cover some of the things that I care a lot about that I think would help and mean a lot to the people who are now following this channel. I had actually done a strong study on Adam-ondi-Ahman a couple years ago, and I started looking at different languages and seeing if there was phonetic translations for Adam-ondi-Ahman. What could it be? One thing I found is I started listening to this man named James Vukovic. He is an Ojibwe language teacher. I gained a great interest in his Christ-like manner to teach, and I loved the way he taught the Ojibwe language. So I started printing out things and started reading from them and tried to learn a little bit of the Ojibwe language. And I got the inclination to look for Adam-ondi-Ahman, and I found it in its word parts. And it essentially came to say that it's a purchased path for a particular place for a particular reason. To me, that seemed to be a covenant path back to the Redeemer, or a covenant path, a fall brought about by Adam, taking us through on a covenant path back to the presence of God. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, wait a second. You can't just say that. It may sound like that phonetically, but you're kind of imposing your own thoughts. You're just making this up. And that may very well sound like it. The thing is that the meaning of this expounds what has already been revealed and does not conflict with it whatsoever. Here I made a short going through it. I'd like to show you it real quick so you guys get your own idea of it.
In the Ojibwe language, Adam means buy it from, Ondaman means path, leads from a certain place. If we break down Ondaman into word parts, the initial word part is ond, meaning from a certain place for a certain reason. The final word part is amo, meaning it is a path, a trail, a road, it leads as a line. In the Doctrine and Covenants it states that Amen means the Son Amen, as in Jesus Christ. Together, it seems that Adam-ondi-Ahman refers to a purchase of a certain path leading somewhere. Perhaps this is in reference to the covenant path of our Redeemer Jesus Christ.
So if you caught that, Adam, who brought about the fall, the necessity for a Redeemer to pay the price that man could not pay, that would lead us back to the presence of God. Now, here in this video I've done, I put in all the helpful links so you can investigate, you could look at it yourself and come to your own conclusions. Here on Wikipedia we have an example from what Joseph Smith had said about what Adam-ondi-Ahman is. He said, on May 19th, 1838, Smith formally revealed his belief that Adam-ondi-Ahman was the place where Adam and Eve went after being exiled from the Garden of Eden. Meaning, Adam-ondi-Ahman is not the Garden of Eden, which is a common misconception, but it was the place that Adam and Eve were sent after being exiled. Meaning, they were given the law of sacrifice. They were given a covenant path to return back to the presence of God, which is literally what this is saying in the Ojibwe language. The fall necessitates a need for a redeemer to pay the price, a purchased path, a covenant path, back to the presence of God. It's helped me look at my temple worship in a completely different way. That I can look at my temple worship as if it is my own personal invitation to Adam-ondi-Ahman, where there I can be gathered with the righteous dead through proxy ordinance work, where we are there gathered together with all the sealing powers, all the keys, and we enter into the presence of God and commune with Him in holy circumstance and sacred circumstance. We give an accounting of our stewardship here upon the earth, ask for direction. In fact, we give an accounting to our bishop and our stake president ahead of all of this. Now, eventually, all that goes to up to leaders, to the president of the church, to the previous presidents of the church, to the head of dispensations, all the way down to Adam, who then turns keys over to Jesus Christ at the end. And all things are gathered up. To me, this gathering at Adam-ondi-Ahman, we go to the temple as respectively Adam and Eve, and we return into the presence of God. Now, when President Nelson compared the building or reconstruction or the fixing of the Salt Lake Temple, and told us to pay special close attention to that, and compared it with the temple at Bountiful when Christ came to the Nephites, what was happening with the Nephites? The Nephites had just undergone extensive building of roads and all this infrastructure just for all this stuff to come crashing down at once. And then the more righteous part gather to a center place, to Bountiful, to their temples. And despite their hardships, they mourned for days. But despite their hardships, it was when they started finding joy despite the hardships. That is when Christ came. And Christ came to his temple when they're in the midst of reconstructing it, when they're in the midst of fixing it, repairing it, essentially repenting, fixing, correcting. It wasn't completed, but they're on the right direction, right? Same with us spiritually. We don't have to be perfect, but we ought to be headed the right direction. We ought to be repenting. We ought to be repairing those things. Same with the Salt Lake Temple. Does it necessarily have to be completed before Christ can come again? Because that's not what he did with Bountiful. Yet our attention has been purposely drawn there by the president of the church, who earnestly sought to encourage us to be prepared for his coming and draw our attention to that connection between those temples and those circumstances. Christ will come to his temple if we need to be where Christ is. We need to be worthy to enter his home. Our homes need to be extensions of the church, of the temples, everything. Our covenants should extend beyond this. Each temple is like a tether to heaven, pulling it down to earth. It's building up pressure upon the earth, where Satan is writhing with his chains. There's so much pressure, things are going to pop. And we know who wins. That's the ultimate message of Revelation. As part of this, I wanted to look at talk about the Garden of Eden. Now, Eden in Akkadian meant steppe or grassland. I heard one philosopher or someone on a documentary go more in depth about this, and he talked about how that Eden was not only grassland, but it was untouched land, uncultivated, meaning that any soul, any body could go into this land and thrive. There's vegetation, there was meat, there was water, there's all manner of beauty, and it was untouched by man, uncultivated, unspoiled land. And so they relate that to near the Tigris and Euphrates. Now, and we see all these changes that happen with the Tigris and Euphrates, that there was great floods. If you remember, each seal has a different purpose, but there was all this flooding that had occurred that left the land exceptionally moist, muddy, and then was quickly being dried by the hot winds and air. But this all was savanna, grassland. And with that, with what was it, the fourth It was the fourth dispensation, or the fourth seal, with Abraham, when the winds came and dried the lands. From the time of the Tower of Babel, we see all this becoming drier, harder. They learned how to bake brick, create a great tower. Now, one thing I'm going to cover in the future is the Tower of Babel, because I believe that there is historical synchronisms. I believe I've found it. It's not what we've typically thought, because everyone does this hyper literal interpretation of numbers from the Bible, and I think that's absolutely wrong way to go about it, because those numbers were never meant to be literal, and they disagree with themselves. It's not consistent. But when we look at ancient Mesopotamia, we see Ur Dynasty 3, and we see Ur-Nammu, coming in and taking over as an emperor. And we see the building of the great ziggurat of Ur, which is dismantling. It was built to dismantle their sky god, their father god of heaven, Anu, to take him off the throne and replace him with Inanna, a goddess. And during this time, it was a huge Renaissance period of literature and scripture being rewritten. Everything was being rewritten. In fact, each of their flood myths that come from this era, they all disagree with each other. They have some common themes, but they're different. There was many languages popping out of this, or ways of speaking of the same thing. So I would suggest, I'm going to go over that in a later period, go through a time, all that stuff. I've gone through a map here trying to mark some of my own areas to go over. But that's a thing for another time. Another part I want to talk about is in Mesopotamia, you get a lot of these people talking about these gods carrying this handbag. It's the Anunnaki, and it's the handbag, and this pine cone is the pineal gland, and they're bringing, information. It's not that. It's not the ancient aliens crud, right? And all these go across many different cultures, and they've only scratched the surface what this even means. These bags are actually buckets. They're buckets filled with pollen. And the pine cone is literally a pine cone. It's an applicator, which they dip into the bucket, into the pollen, and then all these images are always in a garden scene. That's the context. So it's basically whichever king or god or priest, whoever this is, whatever ruler that is, they are the nurturers of the garden or the kingdom, the realm, the empire. Essentially saying, look to me, I provide for you. Look to the government, look to the ruler, I provide for you. I'm the gardener. He's the Adam who's cultivating the Garden of Eden. I think that this is a bastardized version of a true ordinance that once existed. We have elements of this that have extended out to the Navajo with their corn pollen offering, where they go to each direction, north, south, east, west, and up to heaven, down to earth. It's very similar to the Jewish grain offering. Instead of corn pollen, it's grain. And they do it to each of the directions, right? Very similar. I think those are echoes of a once purposeful ordinance that this was used and manipulated to gain control over people. It's the state taking over, the corruption. Is, men becoming giants and rulers over others. And that Eden, I'm not sure if I covered that or not, but Eden is grassland, uncultivated. It's hard for me to keep track of how many times I've covered this because the computer stopped recording a few times. Now, when I moved here, I recently moved to Missouri. So I live down here near Springfield, this area. But when I moved here, I drove through St. Joseph, which is right here, runs parallel near Adam-ondi-Ahman. I gotta tell you, when I crossed that threshold into this area, it was just beauty. It was like feeling nostalgic, like visiting a grandma's house kind of feeling. Warm, comforting, soothing, all manner of images and and thoughts coming to your mind and comforting you. And at least that's how it was for me. I loved coming through here. And I knew that the whole us moving here was the right thing to do, because my whole life I lived out here in the West, in the desert. It's so miserable. And the thing is my realtor, who I used, is also the realtor the church uses, who's told me, she can't say why, but the church has been buying up large acres of land. 20 some acres here, 30 some acres here. So there's some big plans going on with the church currently. I know in my last video, I quoted somebody else who said the church isn't planning past 10 years. That's just a quote. That's what we have. That's what we have from that letter that was given to us. We weren't there. We don't know the context. We don't know everything that was said. Does that mean that the church is giving up after 10 years? No. Does that mean that they don't have things that are following through into 10 years? No. It's a quote. We take it with a grain of salt. And I think it's foolish just to dismiss things, all the time. I'm tired of people acting like the arbiters of what we can and cannot talk about, as if it's no interest to them, so we're not allowed to talk. It is curious. I do believe the Savior's coming soon. I mean, look, I am originally from California. California is not livable, at least not for me. It's not practical. It's not affordable. It's awful. We have been gradually moving out to Arizona, Utah, Idaho. Now these areas are getting unlivable and people are moving further out. The growth is so significant out here. My realtor told me that I think it was Elder Betnar who came to the Bentonville, Arkansas temple dedication, and in some meeting had mentioned that the gathering to Missouri, the gathering, has already begun. And it's not some massive call out. It's not some organized thing. It's a natural thing. Missouri used to be the frontier of the West. Yet people bypassed it and came directly over here, leaving a lot of this area untouched. And now people are bouncing back to this area. And honestly, our future generations, are they going to keep living out here when it's completely unaffordable? We have so many Latter-day Saints that are moving out here. The baptisms, everything is growing so significantly out here. We have people returning to church. There are people being baptized, convert baptisms like crazy. You have new people moving out here in record numbers. This is the allegory of the olive tree happening before our eyes. This is the gathering of Israel, those who let God prevail in their lives. Gathering by covenant, gathering in temples, literally gathering together. Becoming saviors on Mount Zion, taking names to the temple, sealing on heaven and on earth. Going in, and as respectively Adam and Eve, returning to the presence of the Lord in preparation for the inevitable, literal return of Jesus Christ. That is where we're at. What do I see in the future? I don't see a lot of the rising generation staying in California, in Oregon, Utah. Lots of people will, but when it becomes impractical, not affordable, economically, naturally, people are going to migrate where places are more affordable. We came out here and have a remarkable home, something that we never thought we would have. And it's just made our lives so much easier for us to move, to do anything. It's given us flexibility and comfort and confidence, covenant confidence. Anyways, this is all I want to share. Hopefully this recorded. Third time's the charm, I suppose. I'm not sure if I missed anything from what I've covered before, but there's a lot of new people on the channel. I wanted to share some of the things that are more interesting to me, things I've shared before, and kind of abridge that all and bring it all into one. And I'm sorry there's no camera on me. I tried changing that to see if it would at least record an audio, and I could still do a screen recording. So hopefully that worked. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you for watching. This is not a substitute for your own study, for your own own prayer, for your own anything. I just want to be able to share this with somebody without putting them to sleep. In fact, heck, I'm better than melatonin. Put this on headphones as you go to bed. I'm told I have a voice that'll put people to sleep. Might as well be a professor. I gotta get the smarts for that first. Anyways, take care. Love you. Hopefully this is helpful.